Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Monday. Thank you guys so much for joining us. My name is Daryan Jones. I'm the Caregiver Education and Digital Specialist at Care Partners. We're back today with another Hot Topic Live segment. Today we're joined by Brianna Garrison. She works at Baylor as a lecturer, and she does a bunch of other things there too. One of the things she does is Alzheimer's research, so she's going to talk a little bit about that today. But our main topic for the day is transitions in caregiving. So she's going to touch a bit on intimacy. We might have talk a bit about driving and things at the end. She's also going to touch on what is the role of a caregiver. So it's going to be some really important, helpful information today. Real quick before we get started, I wanted to let you guys know that we are continuing to monitor the coronavirus pandemic situation, and we have decided to suspend all of our in-person programming until May 31st. So if you want updates on all of that, you can visit our website at carepartnerstexas.org. That'll be the best place to find the information. We have the monitoring the coronavirus page, so you can get all the information and resources there on what we're doing. And as well, another great place to keep up with us and what we're doing is on Facebook or Instagram and Twitter. So we're on all the social medias, and we'd love for you guys to follow us and let us know how you guys are doing. You guys can email us at info@carepartnerstexas.org. We'd love to see just pictures or stories or hear what you guys are up to. We really, really miss you guys, and we can't wait to get back to our in-person programming. But we're so excited about the things we're able to provide for you guys while we can't. So we'd love to hear the impact that we've been having and just anything that you guys have been up to. With that, I'm going to invite Brianna on, and we're going to get started. Hello, Brianna. How are you today?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
We are so excited that you could make it. We know that this is a really important topic, so we're really glad that you could come. Before we get started, I guess, do you want to just tell us a little about yourself and a little bit about what we're talking about today?
Yeah, so I am a licensed clinical social worker here in the state of Texas. I have been practicing in the Houston area for about the last decade. My practice area has always been with older adults, previously in oncology and then in Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. My research in the last couple of years has focused on caregivers of older adults living with dementia, specifically looking at social networks of caregivers and how social networks can prevent social isolation. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit more about your research, I think, at the end.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about how you guys can help participate in the research. So it's a really cool opportunity for that. I guess, Brianna, do you want to go ahead and get started with the transitions in caregiving?
Yeah, I would love to. So one of the things that I love about talking about transitions in caregiving is that caregivers have such a multifaceted role. The When people think about caregivers, I think they think about the main duties of being a caregiver and maybe the physical tasks or maybe medical appointments, but there's so much more to that. And so, what I want to talk about today is a little bit about the trajectory of caregiving, what those transitions look like, the roles that family caregivers hold. I want to talk a little bit about intimacy and how that may change as your trajectory of being a caregiver, particularly if you're a caregiver who is caring for your partner, your marital partner, spouse. And then if we have a little bit of time, we'll talk a little bit about driving and then some key reminders for caregivers. So when we think about the caregiving trajectory, one of the things that's so important is that it's variable across all courses of caregiving, right? When caregivers get together, there's a lot of commonality that you can share, but often each and every one of your individual journey is your own journey, right? It's unique to you, it's unique to your loved one. And so it's really important to understand that what someone else may be going through or the symptoms that their loved one may be experiencing may not be exactly the same for you. And that doesn't mean that you're not doing things correctly or that something is wrong. But generally understanding that it's a unique experience for each caregiver. The transition in care needs of the person living with dementia in the setting of the care that is provided, again, is unique to family preferences, is unique to your needs. And we're going to talk a little bit about indicators or things that might let you know that more responsibility is coming on, that might be signs and hints for you to start thinking about additional levels of care. But again, not anything for you to say, this is a black and white next stage, but things for us to begin to be curious about. Caregiving, again, is not in isolation from the other roles and responsibilities. So I see all the wonderful things that you are doing and all the roles that you fulfill. If you filled out a resume for being a caregiver, you wouldn't have one bullet point, but you could have pages and pages and pages of the things that you're doing. And so I want to talk a little bit about what that looks like. In the care trajectory, there is this line of caregiving that goes from the awareness of what's going on with the individual. So if you're in the early aspects of the person living with dementia, you might see, might be going to an appointment, like errands, checking in and monitoring, maybe communicating with health providers, but it's really just an awareness of you all working together. Then that might increase to unfolding responsibility, increase household tasks, and where you might be needing to monitor symptoms or medications with more accuracy, manage finances and household tasks. You might need someone in the home to help with some of the physical care tasks, coordinating the care, and then providing emotional support as your loved one grapples with what those changes mean for them, and how they feel about those changes. Then we see this next level in the trajectory where there's this increased care demands, where personal care really takes a forefront and those changes occur. You might need to monitor behavior, symptoms, or the location of your loved one with more diligence. Personal care increases with bathing, um, food management, um, dealing with insurance. Do you need more home care or out of the home care that long-term care insurance could provide? Um, and then providing acute care to manage any symptoms that are occurring. And then as we look at further down the road, we look at the trajectory expanding when it comes to end of life care, advanced care planning. Do you have all the documents that you need? Have you had opportunities to have discussions about the patient's wishes, minimizing suffering, and again, monitoring safety and symptom management for comfort? The role of the caregiver, I really see this kind of dual role that we see, this physical role of the caregiver that I think a lot of people, when they think of the word caregiver, that's the first thing that pops in mind. But even though that happens, there's still this really big cognitive and interpersonal part of being a caregiver. Despite the unique nature of any given caregiver's role over time, those domains of activity that characterize family caregiving ranges from assistance with daily activities to providing the direct care to managing the complex medical system that we're a part of, and social service systems. But it also includes self-care, mobility, emotional and social support, health and medical care, often making decisions on behalf of a loved one. And so each of those domains that you're managing has multiple tasks and activities that are associated with those. And so when we look across the domain of cognitive, physical, and interpersonal aspects of being a caregiver, that might include continual problem solving, decision making daily, communicating with others, family members, the health system, human service professionals that you're working with, and then this constant vigilance over the care recipient's well being. And all of that can feel really overloading and demanding. It's not just this one piece of the pie that you're taking. but it's the whole Thanksgiving spread that you've now taken on, and often without training or adequate time to volunteer for this role. Right? It's not a job that you went to college to do. This is often something that you've been thrust into, and you're emotionally connected to, and you're serving this role. And so when we think about the caregiver role, it's much more than those physical needs. It's the emotional support, the health and medical care, the care coordination, and the decision making. And that can often lead to feelings of being overwhelmed or decision fatigue, or burnout. And so it's really important to recognize one, the fullness that your role holds, right? To honor all of the roles that you're fulfilling, but also to recognize as the longer you're a caregiver, the more of those roles that you're taking on. Um, One of the things that I want to talk about in that is that, particularly if you're emotionally connected to the individual, which you are, um, you have some sort of relationship intimacy with this person. And now, if they're your life partner, your marital partner, then you see that um, often people think, well, once a diagnosis like dementia comes on, that's the end of any kind of intimacy. And it's not. But intimacy may change, right? Physical intimacy may change because of physical health needs, or comfort levels with consent. But often, even the emotional intimacy you might see change, because of the ability to have the same level of conversation. And so, one of the questions that I get a lot from caregivers is, as you're taking on more responsibility, you're also having this thought in the background of, how do I maintain um, an intimate relation with this person, to really cherish this time that I have, right? To really relish in the time that we have together, and not fall into just being the person that's fulfilling all these roles. Um, and one of the things that I really love talking about intimacy is that we see all relationships experience changes in intimacy over time, right? Many couples may find that they can still be close in the relationship, even if sexual difficulties may arise. It's important to remember that there's not a single normal way of dealing with intimacy, but looking for ways to find connection and meaning. And that means the most important aspect that you can provide as a caregiver is the assurance that your loved one is loved and safe and cared for by you and others. Um, you can welcome the conversation to talk about those changes with medical providers or social workers or clergy. You can talk about those concerns in your support group and get unique ideas of how to address that. Um, but also intentionally thinking about the positive aspects of the relationship and the strengths of the individual. When you're in this problem solving, decision making role all day for a person, sometimes it's hard to switch gears and also think about what strengths that person has to offer. But if we can take that time to have that perspective, then we can still connect with that person. In their personhood, for what they have to offer, the emotional connection that we have to them. And that means that we find ways to have relationship and connection, even as um, cognition declines, even as physical ability to participate in intimate acts declines. That maybe it's holding hands while listening to a song, it's sharing a memory that you had together and the feelings that came with those memories. But most importantly, it's that assurance of being loved and safe and cared for. And what I also want to say to you is that, even though your loved one that you're caring for may not be able to verbally express those same sentiments to you, they do love and appreciate and value all the multifaceted roles that you hold for them. And it can be really hard to fulfill those roles without hearing those words back. And so I want to be a person today to remind you of the value and worth that you bring, and how important the work that you're doing, but also just as a person that you are loved and valued and cared for by so many people. Care Partners, an organization that is its whole mission is to figure out how to support the work that you're doing, and creating activities and opportunities for connection for you to still have meaningful connection and to be able to be affirmed in the work that you're doing. And so, with that said, one of the last things I want to say about intimacy is just exploring ways to spend time together and find that connection. So, looking at your time during the day, if you're setting a schedule for the day or the week, um, we have all the immediate tasks that need to be ahead of us, right? Medication, bathing, meals, but maybe making sure intentionally that we're scheduling that relationship connection time. Maybe it's playing a song that was really important to you. Maybe it is a poetry that you all enjoyed together that you can read together. Focusing on ways to show affection and positive regard. Maybe it's a hand massage or holding hands, or even, you know, implementing those non-sexual forms of touching to reassure, I love you and I care for you. And there's this mutual relationship that's behind all the work that I'm doing here. Um, And one of the things that I want to address, as we start to wrap up a little bit, is thinking about some key reminders to care for yourself when you're fulfilling all of these roles. Um, you are so good about ensuring the care of your loved one, but I want to remind you too that routine care for yourself is very important. You're scheduling their doctor's appointments, schedule your doctor's appointments. Make sure that you're seeing your PCP regularly, that you're seeing your specialists, that you are taking your medication, that you're drinking water. Just like the airplane. uh, uh, Safety measures tell us to put our oxygen mask on first, right? We've got to do the necessary steps to take care of ourselves so we can continue to fill all those various roles that we're in. Participate in education and support programs, even though it feels like another task in your day, even though it feels like something additional to go to. Often it can be really validating to hear what others are experiencing, to have an opportunity to problem solve and be creative about maybe barriers that you're running into, or problems that you have had happen and you haven't figured out the best solution, or creative things that you haven't thought of yet that someone else that's further down their trajectory can share with you. And again, utilizing the support networks. There are professionals out, especially in the Houston area, that care about the work that you're doing, that care about supporting you in what you're doing. And they will give you the time, they will share the information and resources and knowledge with you. Friends and family, when people are offering support, sometimes it can be overwhelming to think of tasks that they can do. But again, being honest about what you may need and asking for specific things. If people are offering, they're offering, even if they're not offering specific things, they're offering because they care and they want to be involved. And so those are some of the key reminders that, as I think about all that you're doing to take care of your loved one and do such an amazing job at, that I also want to make sure that you're doing for yourself. And if we have just a few minutes, I know some of the questions that usually come up about driving, is, how do we prepare for those changes, and what do we do in there? One of the things that I see often, is just this disconnect between how important driving is to an individual, right? Driving is our first experience of independence. When you turn 16, you get to drive and you go away from your parents. It's the first time you really get to be your own person. And so driving is so deeply connected to our independence. And so approaching the conversation and your response to driving with empathy, and looking for signs of unsafe driving, to have that conversation, acknowledging that it's deeply tied to independence. So instead of just making the rule, having an empathetic and sympathetic conversation. Again, you can get some facts through evaluations like a physical exam, an eye exam, a driving safety assessment. You can look for signs of unsafe driving, like getting lost, driving to familiar places, confusion between the brake and gas pedals, slow decision making, hitting curbs, driving too slowly or speeding, becoming angry or confused while driving. And then one of the things that, when you think of strategies that might be last resorts, controlling key access, disabling the vehicle in some way, and then even ultimately selling the vehicle so that it's not a continued safety hazard. So that's just a brief response to that. But I know that in the trajectory of caregiving, that's often something that's in the back of your mind, is when to have that conversation and how to have it. And my advice is always to have it as openly as you can, with as much empathy and respect that you can, knowing that driving isn't just a task, but it's really tied to a symbolism of independence and freedom. And so acknowledging what that loss may mean for your loved one.
And thank you so
Yeah.
much, Brianna.
Yeah.
I wanted to put up your contact information just in case people wanted to reach out to you.
Yes.
I wanted to also echo a few of your thoughts. Just if you need help, like, there is help available. Care partners, there's so many organizations. And one of the things we just want people to know is that you're not alone. And there are so many people who want to help you. And we know how important the job is that you're doing. And we just, like you were saying, one of the questions I was thinking about in my head is, how important is the self-care and taking care of yourself as well? So you touched on that a lot. And I just think that those are really important things to remember too. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your research and how people can get involved in that?
Yes, I would love to. So my research is really looking at what are the support networks of caregivers, and particularly, do faith communities offer support networks, and how can our faith communities offer better support because of the barriers that may exist. And so there's a quick survey that'll take 15 to 20 minutes, and we can put that link up for you. It's up there that you can participate in. You can also email me and I'll be happy to send that to you. And then I'm also doing interviews, one-on-one interviews with caregivers, just to hear about your experience as a caregiver and how faith has impacted your caregiving journey. I'd love to take your perspective and see if we could take those back to faith communities and say, these are things that help our caregivers, these are things that have been barriers, and see what we can do about really expanding support networks that come from our caregivers.
I think your research that you're doing is so interesting and really important. I also put that link in the comments below, so you guys can click on that and be able to go there too. And we'll also have this video up on our website, and you'll be able to find the link there too. Later today, we'll get it up, or later this week, we'll see. Oh my gosh, sorry, my cat's eating my plant. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we really, really do appreciate you taking the time. It was some really good, helpful advice. I guess we'll just leave it with this. I had one last question. If there's a caregiver who is feeling overwhelmed at how much new things that they're doing, do you have any advice for how to separate the tasks and kind of tackle it just one day at a time?
Yeah, I think it can feel really overwhelming, especially when you look at that big picture of what's going on. And so it might be really helpful to think through, like, what are the priorities for this week? or even today. Like if I have to get 2 things done today, what are those priorities that must be done? And so helping kind of manage that way. But I would also encourage you that if you're in that position of feeling overwhelmed with all of the responsibility and trying to figure out how to navigate it, reach out to the professionals in your community through care partners, or if you're connected to another organization, and they will gladly help you think through those and help you divide out those tasks in ways that can be manageable and workable, rather than looking at 100 things to do at once. How can we break these down into manageable steps that you can do on your own?
Thank you so much, Brianna. Again, we just really appreciate you taking the time to be here. And if you guys do want to contact her, her information is there up on the screen.
Yeah.
We're going to say goodbye for now, but we hope you have a great rest of your day and rest of your week, Brianna.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
And real quick, I just want to let all of you guys know, again, to email us with any updates with you guys. We are still offering the Common Ground support groups twice a week. So that's Tuesday mornings at 10 a.m. and Thursday afternoons at 2 p.m. So if you're a caregiver who's seeking that connection and just needs someone to talk to, it's a free Zoom conference. So you can find all that information on our website. And just be sure to follow us on social media for any other updates. We'll be back soon with some more educational content and other fun things. So stay tuned. Thanks so much. We'll see you guys soon.